Welcome to our channel. In this video, you will learn amazing and rare facts from different areas of life. Watch all episodes of 1000 Interesting Facts to learn a lot of interesting things. Fact 801: the oldest written complaint was found on a 4,000-year-old Babylonian clay tablet. The tablet is a letter from a customer who bought substandard copper and demanded a refund. Fact 802: husbandry lockers are found in Chinese shopping malls. Fact 803: Sir Timothy Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web in 1989 simply because it annoyed him to constantly have to get up and walk over to his colleagues to find out what data was stored on their computers and transfer the data to his own. You could say that the internet was spawned by laziness. Fact 804: before the incandescent light bulb was invented, people slept more than 10 hours a night. Fact 805: of all insects, only mantises and dragonflies can turn their heads around their axes like humans. All other insects can only move their heads up and down and sideways. Fact 806: according to the thrifty genes hypothesis, for thousands of years, natural selection has only favored people who can accumulate fat quickly. They have a better chance of surviving hunger. And now, with food in abundance, this superpower has turned into a global obesity epidemic. Fact 807: in France, 200 million frogs are eaten each year, and in Peru about 65 million guinea pigs are eaten each year. Fact 808: approximately 8,000 genes of our 20,000 to 25,000 genes are shared with fruit flies, Drosophila. In addition, humans and flies have much the same biochemical processes. That's why fruit flies have long been used for biological research. 5 scientists have received Nobel Prizes thanks to them. Fact 809: for Japanese soldier Yoki Shoichi, World War II ended in 1972. Unwilling to accept Japan's defeat, he spent 27 years in the jungles of Guam, but eventually accepted surrender. Fact 810: older Japanese people commit petty crimes to live out the rest of their days in state-supported prison. People over the age of 65 make up as much as a quarter of all prisoners in Japan. Fact 811: American hunters in the woods use camouflaged toilet paper to avoid being accidentally shot. White paper another hunter might mistake for the tail of a white-tailed deer. Fact 812: the glass harmonica, invented by Benjamin Franklin, consisted of glass hemispheres and made gentle, incomparably sweet sounds. It was popular at first, but then people began to believe that the sound of the harmonica caused depression, melancholy, premature birth, and could even drive you insane. Fact 813: gorilla Coco could speak sign language and understood about 2,000 English words by year. She had pets, kittens, to which she gave names. When she was told that her friend, the actor Robin Williams, had passed away, Coco indicated in sign language woman crying, referring to herself. Fact 814: American slaves brought back from Africa were given redacted Bibles by their masters in which those chapters that might have contributed to the rebellion were removed. The slave Bibles were missing half of the New Testament and most of the Old Testament. Fact 815: in 1994, the US military attempted to develop a blue bomb containing an aphrodisiac. Such a bomb was supposed to induce homosexual attraction in enemy soldiers and morally corrupt the enemy army. Fact 816: the planets of the solar system do not revolve around the sun, but around the center of mass of the solar system, which is called the barycenter. Fact 817: due to the Etwesh effect, a train going from west to east weighs less than the exact same train going from east to west. Fact 818: before Ernest Hemingway was satisfied with the ending of his novel Farewell, Arms, he rewrote the final chapter 39 times. Fact 819: chimpanzees are much better at intrigue than humans. The reason is that chimpanzees live in a competitive social environment where they must constantly try to outsmart their fellows, while humans, on the other hand, are born cooperative. Fact 820: bulbous bow is a projecting part on the bow of a ship below the waterline which reduces drag, increases speed, and reduces fuel consumption by 12 to 15%. Fact 821: Hollywood has a profession as an intimacy coordinator who handles the staging of sex scenes and makes sure the actors are comfortable and safe during their filming. Fact 822, suitcases on wheels were thought to be reserved for women until the 1970s. Department stores refused to sell them for fear that male customers would think they were considered wimps. Fact 823, the Sun orbits around the center of the Milky Way galaxy at about 220 kilometers per second, making a complete revolution in 250 million years. It also rotates on its axis. A solar day lasts 25 Earth days. Fact 824, conservationists have caught all of the remaining endangered California condors. They are now being held in captivity to ensure the survival of the species. However, all of the birds were treated with flea treatment and inadvertently destroyed the species Culpocephalum californici, which lived only on California condors. Fact 825, more tobacco is grown in the United States than wheat. And the largest crops are corn and peanuts. Fact 826, the porcupine dilemma is a metaphor used in psychology to describe the inherent contradiction in human relationships. The need for community attracts them to each other, while character flaws repel them. Fact 827, Spain is not the birthplace of bullfighting. Bullfighting was done as far back as ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and even ancient China. Fact 828, archaeologists find very few bones at the site of the Battle of Waterloo, although thousands of soldiers and horses are known to be buried in mass graves. The fact is that most of the bones were collected in the 19th century by Belgian sugar workers. Bone meal was used to bleach brown sugar from beets. Other remains were used as fertilizer. Fact 829, a 52-year-old Pakistani man named Sardar Jan Muhammad Khan Khilji became a father for the 60th time. According to the man, he does not plan to stop there, writes BBC News. Fact 830, the first country to ban foie gras production due to animal cruelty was Nazi Germany, 1933. Fact 831, ancient Romans used one hand to show numbers up to 100 and the other to show numbers over 100. Using both hands, they could count to 10,000. Fact 832, Google, Apple, Adobe, Intel and several other megacorporations had a secret agreement not to hire each other's employees to keep salaries low. This resulted in a $325 million class action lawsuit brought by 64,000 of their former employees. Fact 833, a bee has two stomachs, one for nectar and one for food. Honey is nothing more than partially digested nectar regurgitated by bees. Fact 834, dentistry is one of the oldest professions. A rotten tooth, deliberately cleaned and scraped out with a special tool, was found on a 9,000-year-old human skull. Fact 835, Native Americans now obtain feathers for headdresses and ceremonies from the U.S. National Eagle Vault, where dead eagles and golden eagles are processed specifically for this purpose. Fact 836, in the last census in Great Britain, 390,000 people, 0.7% of the population, listed Jediism as their religion. The British Ministry of Justice registered the new religion as Jedi Knight. There are more adherents of the new religion in Great Britain than there are Jews and Buddhists. Fact 837, in 1876, French anthropologists organized the Society of Mutual Autopsy, each member of which pledged to bequeath his body and especially his brain to be studied by the other members. Fact 838, the search for the Higgs boson has not been easy for the scientific community. Although the existence of this elementary particle was predicted by Higgs as early as 1964, it took almost half a century before its existence was confirmed with the Large Hadron Collider, and the collider itself cost a great deal of money. Fact 839, in Japan, a court allowed the retrial of 87-year-old Iwao Hakamata. He was sentenced to death for the murder of 4 people 60 years ago, spent 34 years in a cell, but the charges against him were later found to be trumped up and the man was released in 2014. Fact 840, on February 16, 1568, during the height of Philip II's struggle against Protestantism, the Spanish Inquisition handed down the death sentence to all the inhabitants of the Netherlands. Fact 841, on January 20, 1973, the town of Deadwood, South Dakota, recorded a temperature of -26 degrees Celsius. Seemingly nothing unusual, but at the same time in the town of Leeds, 3 kilometers away from Deadwood, it was plus 11 degrees Celsius. Fact 842, the Great Pyramid of Giza has a large unexplored empty area, scans show. Fact 843, France eats 200 million frogs annually and Peru eats about 65 million guinea pigs each year. Fact 844, the Nobel Prize is not awarded posthumously, but in 2011 it was awarded to the American immunologist Ralph Steinman, who had been dead for 3 days when it was awarded, but the Nobel Committee did not know about it. Fact 845, the British spy Phyllis Latour, who spied on the Nazis in France, transmitted messages to the Allies using knitting by knitting cipher codes on cloth. Fact 846, the longest canine ears were measured on September 29, 2004. The owner is a bloodhound named Tigger, whose owners Brian and Christina Flessner live in St. Joseph, Illinois. The dog's right ear is 34.9 centimeters long and his left ear is 34.2 centimeters. Fact 847, although the ancient Romans used lead to build water pipes, there have been no actual cases of lead poisoning in humans. The high calcium content of the water led to the formation of a plaque on the inside of the pipes, preventing lead from entering the water. Fact 848, a grizzly bear can reach speeds of up to 55 kilometers per hour, so it can hunt deer and elk. Fact 849, the skull bones of humans and chimpanzees are the same, but chimpanzees grow their jaws faster and humans grow their brains faster. Fact 850, apple seeds, like the seeds of apricots, peaches, cherries, and even raspberries, contain cyanide. Eaten in large quantities, they can cause poisoning. Pets are much more sensitive to cyanide compounds, so you shouldn't give your dogs apple nibs. Fact 851, scientists have been able to trace the history of the human immunodeficiency virus, HIV. So-called Patient Zero lived in Cameroon, Africa, and contracted the virus in 1908, supposedly while hunting chimpanzees. Fact 852, a fossil egg with a well-preserved dinosaur embryo at least 66 million years old has been found in China. Fact 853, in 1954, Donald Duck's comic books were removed from libraries in Finland because the drawings depicted him without his pants. Fact 854, on November 9, 2006, during the Guinness World Records Day celebration, American Jackie Bibby was able to hold 10 rattlesnakes by their tails in his mouth for 10 seconds without assistance. Fact 855, sea turtles cry all the time. This way they get rid of excess salt in the body, their lacrimal glands function as kidneys. Fact 856, the crustacean species G. Calopterus rhenanii lived 400 million years ago and was much larger than a human, up to 2.5 m long. One of the largest known arthropods. Fact 857, real Tibetan tea is drunk with oil and salt, but Kalmyk tea is drunk with salt and pepper. And no sugar. Fact 858, the last group of humans of the species Homo erectus died in a flood on the island of Java 108,000 years ago. Fact 859, 2 nations on Earth have exactly the same flag, Monaco and Indonesia. Fact 860, from 1.8 billion BC to 0.8 billion BC, nothing happened on Earth. Scientists have nicknamed this period the Boring Billion. Fact 861, science has documented many criteria for sexual selection in animals, but little is still known about what influences mate choice in humans. Fact 862, during the American Civil War, 1861 to 1865, physicians used morphine to relieve the suffering of the wounded for the first time in the history of military medicine. As a result, more than 400,000 soldiers became hardened addicts. It was since then that the term soldier's disease, referring to morphine addiction, was coined. Fact 863, Sudan has more pyramids than Egypt. They are smaller, but just as magnificent and culturally valuable. Fact 864, there are 336 rivers that flow into Baikal, but only one river, the Angara, flows out. If we divide all the water in Baikal by all the inhabitants of Russia, then each person would get about 166,000 cubic meters of the purest water. Fact 865, To promote the game Assassin's Creed: Black Flag, Ubisoft financed the exhumation, DNA testing and facial reconstruction of the famous 18th century pirate Amaro Pargo. Fact 866, the most performed song in English, Happy Birthday to You, is protected by copyright law. The rights to the song belong to the Time Warner Corporation. In Europe, the song's copyright protection will expire in 2016 and in the US only in 2030. Fact 867, animal intestinal condom found by archaeologists in the cesspool of Dudley Castle, UK. Dated 1642 to 1647. Fact 868, Indonesia is the fourth most populous country in the world. The first three places are taken by China, India, and the United States. Fact 869, the S9 frames designed for the US military were so tasteless that the glasses were nicknamed birth control. It was believed that the chance of a guy wearing these glasses meeting a girl was 0. Fact 870, after the death of Queen Elizabeth I of England in 1603, there were about 3,000 dresses in her closet. Peter I's daughter, Russian Empress Elizaveta Petrovna, died on December 25, 1761 and left behind 15,000 dresses and a thoroughly devastated state treasury. Fact 871, in medieval Europe, people ate powdered ancient Egyptian mummies for medicinal purposes. Fact 872, before 1900, matryoshkas were not known in Russia. Fact 873, Peru holds an annual Takanaqui festival on December 25, during which local men, women, and children can fight with anyone to settle a relationship or avenge old grievances. Fact 874, France has the longest land border with Brazil. The state borders separating the national territories of Brazil and France, French Guiana, runs in the northeast of the South American continent. The length of the border is 730 kilometers. The Franco-Spanish border is 50 kilometers shorter. Fact 875, Therizinosaurus or Lizardcosaurus, a dinosaur nearly 12 meters long and weighing 6 tons, had enormous claws that grew to a meter in length, the longest claws ever found. 72.1 to 66.0 million years ago. Fact 876, the French kiss in Russia was called the Tartar kiss, but in France itself it is called the English kiss. Fact 877, the most common classification of human races is as follows: Caucasoid, Mongoloid, Negroid, Australoid, and Americanoid races. However, there are many other classifications, some of which number more than 200 races. Fact 878, bananas and pineapples are grasses, with a banana being a berry. Fact 879, people around the world spend over $330 billion annually on lotteries. Fact 880, the hair on your head and the hair of your beard age at different rates because different genes are responsible for this process. Fact 881, temnothorax ants, when sick, leave the anthill and die proudly alone so that the disease does not affect the entire colony. Fact 882, the average lifespan of a bee is 5 to 6 weeks. During this time, the bee manages to produce no more than 2 teaspoons of honey. Fact 883, artificial Christmas trees were invented at a company that made toilet brushes and made them on the same equipment as the brushes. Fact 884, on February 15, 2011, Swiss diver Peter Cole set a new record for breath hold. He spent 19 minutes and 21 seconds underwater without a scuba diver. Fact 885, treadmills were invented 200 years ago to punish prisoners. Fact 886, in the 3rd millennium BC, in ancient Sumer, the goddess of beer, Ninkasi, was venerated. The text known as the Hymn of Ninkasi is actually the oldest recipe for making beer on the planet. Fact 887, on September 4, 476, the Germanic leader Odoacer forced the last Roman emperor Romulus Augustus to abdicate the throne. This day is considered the day of the fall of the Western Roman Empire, which had flourished for 12 centuries. Everything that happened in history before that point is considered antiquity. After this date came the Middle Ages, which lasted until the end of the 15th century. Fact 888, adults who do not marry and live with their parents are called parasito shinguru, parasite single, in Japan. Fact 889, the guillotine was developed as a device for humane execution. The sharp blade cuts off the head so quickly that the person does not suffer. The crowd gathered for the first guillotine execution in history was disappointed by the clinical nature of the novelty and the speed of its operation. People craved more blood and torture of the condemned. Fact 890, 400 years BC, the Persians developed yakals, ancient refrigerators that could keep ice in desert conditions. Fact 891, in 1935, Antonio Ferretti created a wool-like cloth from milk. When wet, it smelled like cheese. Fact 892, the boomerang is not a unique Australian Aboriginal invention. Boomerangs have been around since ancient Egypt. Fact 893, the bigger the city, the faster its inhabitants walk, a study has shown. Fact 894, the largest iceberg in history was discovered in Antarctica in 1956. Its area was 31,000 kilometers more than the area of Belgium. Fact 895, the first automatic door was invented in ancient Greece. It was powered by a hydraulic mechanism. Fact 896, oysters contain 20 times more cholesterol than chicken eggs. Fact 897, women didn't start wearing high-heeled shoes until the 17th century in imitation of men to look more masculine. Fact 898, prime numbers are only divisible by 1 in itself. They are an infinite number, but only two prime numbers, 2 and 5, end in 2 and 5. Fact 899, in Nazi Germany, only people who had at least 3 Jewish grandparents were considered Jewish. If there were fewer than 3 Jewish grandmothers, the person was called a half-breed, a Mischling. Mischlings, unlike Jews, were allowed to serve in the German army. Fact 900, the only country in the world that has participated in all 18 FIFA World Cups is Brazil. And the only one to win 5 times.